I, Philip Joseph Pierre,
I would like to be judged as being the Prime Minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
Came into government that we had a manifesto and a vision and mission that had been approved by my party, by the highest body.
Basel 11 has not been in existence. 50 was...
Dwarf, giant getting bazooka. You spraying big on to knock out mosquitoes.
I have never had a joint account with anybody in my life. Not my ex-wife, not my children, nobody. And I will refer that to the Privileges Committee.
What about the culture of people getting into office and not being effective in terms
When people become Prime Minister of St. Lucia, I've been the most ready.
Let's do it this Wednesday, because if it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live.
Good evening, welcome to another edition of Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with me, Timothy Paulion. We apologize for the late start of the broadcast. This is because the newscast tonight went beyond the stipulated conclusion time, and that is because we had a comprehensive weather report in the broadcast. We go up until 10 o'clock this evening, and at which time we conclude with the clip that peaked as we continue to focus on the state of the health sector in St. Lucia. And my special guest is former Health Minister, Mrs. Sarah Flood Bobra. Welcome to the broadcast, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Timothy. Good evening, viewers. It's a pleasure to be here.
You became the island's health minister close to 3 decades ago. When you were given that, I'll call it tough assignment, what was your reaction? And that assignment was given to you by then Prime Minister Dr. Kenny Anthony.
Well, to be honest, Timothy, I had never thought of what ministry I might have been given. I didn't even know whether I would have been assigned a ministry. So, I welcomed it. And of course, when I went in, I realized what a really tough ministry it was. But one of the very important things that we had was a good primary healthcare structure. The nurses, as you know, are the backbone of any health system. And way back during Sir John's time, we had established 34 health centers around the country. And a good primary healthcare structure, your health centers, now we call them wellness centers, are crucial to have a firm foundation, a firm health infrastructure, a solid one that you can then build up. So we had that. In those days, you had the nurses sleeping at the health centers. So you'd have in your community health centers, your family nurse practitioner, for example, who would be a midwife, who would be someone who could dispense certain prescriptions, would be sleeping there. So you had that solid foundation. We had the St. Jude Hospital that was working very well. Don't forget, we had the Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother, we had the Sisters of Mercy, and the South was well served. We had the Victoria Hospital, which of course, as you recall, would have had many problems. And we dealt with that to substantially reduce the complaints that were mostly emanating from the A&E. To the extent that we were able to focus on mental health, because you remember we did quite a lot of work with Golden Hope Hospital, with Turning Point. So we had the basic health infrastructure that was kept intact, and we dealt with problem areas, even venturing to improve services in mental health, which we did very well. So it's really unfortunate that now we're seeing that the health system and health infrastructure has totally crumbled under this administration.
Before we segue on to now,
yes.
Even whilst you were health minister, you will agree that you had your fair share of challenges, and people were calling for your resignation. Okay, and there were issues, for example, with the waiting period at the accident and emergency department of Victoria Hospital.
And then you had Jugbois, Sam Flood. He used to call Victoria Hospital a vieille femme. And every night on his program, he was on my case about vieille femme and everything. But you will recall also that we had at the time a HERA report that assessed the health services for us, and it identified that 95% of the complaints emanating from Victoria Hospital were from the A&E department. So we knew we had to deal with that problem. And you will recall, Timothy, when I came here with Dr. Lisa Charles, we had her first interview here with you. We brought her from overseas. We sourced her because we knew we needed to change what was going on at the accident and emergency department. So we revamped that entirely. We put a new structure there. And this was the first time we ever had a consultant in A&E. And prior to that, the A&E department, this was where all new doctors who came, the junior doctors, the junior house officers, were just sent there. So it was really what you would call, quote unquote, I don't like to use that word, a bastard child. So you had new doctors just being thrown there, no infrastructure, no systems, no protocol. You did not even have an X-ray machine in there. So you would find that persons would come in with really serious accidents, and in order to get an X-ray, they'd have to wheel them out of the building and up the hill in the pouring rain to have an X-ray to be diagnosed and then come back down. Not even hot water there was there at the time. And so we looked at that. We brought in Howard Medical Center from the US, and we revamped it entirely. The structure, we put a full team of doctors in there, and Dr. Lisa Charles spearheaded that.
So
and we were able to reduce the number of complaints from VH, and we were able to improve the overall health at Victoria Hospital, because in addition to that, sorry Timothy, we worked with the fire service to ensure that the first responders, the ambulances were well equipped, that the staffing was improved, because care starts, emergency care starts, in the case of an accident or in the case where someone's picked up at home, from the point of contact with the patient. So they got the best care we could give them on the ambulance, and then they were transported to the hospital. They got the best care we could give them, so their chances of survival and full recovery were better improved because the emergency care was improved. So we focused.
But the same Dr. Lisa Charles is making reference to has
Yes.
resigned, among other doctors, from the post of Director of Medical Services. What do you think about, I mean, we describe it as that. Some people might say that we're exaggerating, but the mass resignations at the OKE hospital?
Well, Timothy, I want to just go back a bit to the letter that the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association wrote, which said all the problems that there were. And these problems didn't happen overnight. What we do know is that they happened during the term of office of this government. Agreed, we've always had health challenges in the country, but it has never been so bad. But mind you, it is ironic that there have been, never have there been so many resources available, quote unquote, I say available, not necessarily poured into health, because the Health and Security Levy was supposed to raise money for health, but it never was for health because it was deceptively, I should say, imposed on the people of St. Lucia. So whereas we ought to have all the money we need to pour into health, you have the CIP funding that was recently used for health. You have the $75 million US loan from the Saudis to go towards St. Jude. So you have all of this money, but guess what? Health is deteriorating more than ever, and we have a situation where the health infrastructure has been totally demolished. Let's just put it that way. Because you have health centers being closed. I listened to a press release, I think you played it on your Newspin program yesterday, where you had the official from the Ministry of Health saying that the Cassius Health Center was going to be closed and listing out at least 8 locations where someone with a problem, a health problem, would have to go. So you have the maternal and child health services going to one place, you've got the sexual and reproductive health going to another place, at least 8 locations. Grand Riviere,
But that statement was
Marshy,
issued 10 months ago. Huh?
right, Grand Riviere, Marshy, Cicero, Entrepot, the Polyclinic. Listen to me. they have now dissected the health system. It's a cadaver. That's what it is. So you're telling me that if as a patient I have a problem with my leg and I also have a problem with my eye, I must go to Cicero for my leg and go to Moshi for my eye? This is madness. This is what has happened to the health system in St. Lucia. So at every level, at the primary health care, and once you demolish your primary health care, you have nothing to stand on. So the primary health care is demolished. Your secondary health care and tertiary health care, in terms of your hospitals, St. Jude, we know what the situation is. Now the OKEU, what do we have? Nothing left. Nothing left. Yet still, St. Lucians are paying a 2.5% levy. That was supposed to be for health, but it never was. It never was. Because actually, when the Prime Minister presented the bill in Parliament to borrow the funds for the CDP loan, which he called a policy-based loan, he said that the health and security level was a precondition to qualify for that loan, which had nothing to do with health. So the people of St. Lucia were deceived. We're paying a levy for health and security, and health has never been so bad. And this government cannot put it back together. It's obvious. Dr. Lisa Charles, someone who we brought here probably back in 1998 or 1999, who has worked so hard to build up our health infrastructure, has had to leave. Director of surgery, head of surgery left. Head of nephrology left. Head of obstetrics and gynecology left. 7 mass resignations over the past 2 to 3 months.
But the Prime Minister described it as people going on to greener pastures. Isn't it possible that they just gotten new opportunities?
Do not forget that Dr. Lisa Charles left the greener pasture to come here. And I'm speaking about her because I knew her from the time we went and sought her. And there are St. Lucian qualified doctors overseas who would love to come here. But when they hear what's going on, they want to stay where they are. And I know of other doctors who have left, even before those who have now resigned. So it's not about greener pastures. You know, the doctors who are leaving really, and do not forget, the SLMDA called on the government, please do something about it before these resignations. So you are talking about very committed St. Lucians, doctors, who are prepared to work on the challenges, who have always worked on the challenges. But now it's intolerable. And life is being threatened.
If you're given the portfolio of Minister of Health tomorrow, would you take it? And what would you do? Where would you start in terms of remedying the situation?
First of all, Timothy, I won't be given any portfolio of minister because I think my season has passed on this. But let us just say, first of all, we have to make sure we have the resources. We need to have a government that cares enough, a prime minister who cares enough, who understands the importance of health, to make sure we have the resources. Then the infrastructure. You've got to make sure that your community wellness centers are working, are thriving, are efficient. No matter how much money you have to have capacity, persons who can do the job. You've got to bring them in. And those you have, you've got to keep them and make sure that they are properly distributed so that we have the technical, clinical, and administrative expertise that we need. I had a very good permanent secretary, Marcia Filbert-Jules. God bless her soul.
The late year.
Right. I brought Marcia Filbert-Jules in from the Ministry of Finance at the time. 2 of my staff, whom I trusted very much, said to me, Minister, if you need a good PS, go and get this lady. And Marcia came in. And she was solid. She stepped on toes. She stepped on many toes, but she got the job done. She was focused, right? During that time, we had a health sector reform initiative, and Dr. Stephen King led it. We had to bring in someone to manage the Victoria Hospital at the time, too. So we made lots of significant changes. Not all of them were popular, but we were focused. We identified the problem. In the A&E department, we fixed it. It wasn't perfect, but it was much better than it was before, and the complaints reduced. That allowed us to focus on other areas. While I'm here, Timothy, The situation is so bad in St. Lucia right now. The health centers are closing. The hospitals are, what should I say? I mean, I don't want to scare St. Lucians, but we know what it is. A complete mess.
But how
We
could things-
cannot say
How could the situation have been deteriorated within the space of only 3 years and a few months?
well, that's the question I want to ask. This is the question that the Minister of Health needs to answer, and the Prime Minister. This is the question that the Minister of Health and the Prime Minister. I am baffled. Listen to this too, Timothy. I think you will recall that I called you a few weeks, maybe months ago, about Turning Point, where I understood that Turning Point was going to be closed, and I called about that. Do you know I'm understanding that Turning Point is now closed? Turning Point, and I'm subject to correction on this, but I've received information that even as we speak, the very Turning Point that you will recall, the Chief Executive Officer of the Millennium Heights, who, by the way, has resigned as well, he called in and said Turning Point would not be closed. Turning Point is now closed. So you have a situation where your your wellness centers at the community level are closing, where you've legalized marijuana, where alcohol is used rampantly, and persons can't go anywhere to get help for their addictions. Just imagine. Your Alcoholics Anonymous persons who need to have their regular meetings meet under guava trees and mango trees. The community wellness centers are supposed to do all of these things. When we thought of health sector reform, we thought of all of these meetings and meetings in anger management and everything happening at those wellness centers, because the whole idea is that you want to focus on prevention, on your primary health care, so that your hospitals do not become overburdened. So all of the work that's gone into health in this country over the past 30 to 50 years has been obliterated by this government in 2 to 3 years.
But I think at the heart of the issue is the lack of financial resources, and this has plagued every administration. What is warranted, don't you think, is to find a method whereby healthcare can be properly financed in St. Lucia?
That certainly has to happen. We need to have national health insurance, which is why the United Workers' Party administration promised that we would have ensured that every single St. Lucian would have a minimum of $75,000 medical insurance within 100 days of us getting back into office if we did. But I want to say, Timothy, absolutely, as I said before, financial resources are necessary for help, but even more important is how these resources are managed. If you have something that's working well, you maintain it, you keep it working, like your primary healthcare infrastructure, like the hospital that we had managed to bring to a certain point, which OKEU was supposed to have built on it. OKEU is worse than Victoria Hospital was ever. So we're going backward. And yet still the government tells you how much money it's going to give. The Prime Minister said when he made the donation from the CIP reserves to OKEU, he's giving them the money, but he can't manage. He's not a doctor.
But that's to clear old debts.
Old debts, right. So even if he gave them money to clear new debts, which he didn't, it's how this money is managed. Right now, the doctors have gone. What you going to do? You have to find a way of getting them to come back, and they will not come back unless you overhaul the system completely. So you need to have good people on the ground to ensure that the hospital is properly administered and that the systems and procedures are there and that they are followed. Money is necessary, but it's not everything. You can't just throw money at things and expect them to work. I explained to you what we did to make sure we understood the problem in A&E, and with the resources we had, although they were limited, we were able to do the best that we could, and it worked. But this was only to keep VH going until we had better infrastructure to take our secondary health care to a higher level. But this has not happened. We have OKEU worse than VH has ever been, and probably worse now than St. Jude.
Very often politicians take the blame, the brunt of the blame when things go wrong. In this particular instance, do you think that we should also look at those who are individuals, officials who are managing the health sector in St. Lucia? Because, of course, OKEU has a board of directors. Right. And then you have a PS, you have other staff in the Ministry of Health. And I'm sure that the health minister will tell you that he is not a medical doctor, and the prime minister will tell you the same thing too. Don't you think that we should apportion blame not only in the direction of the politicians, the prime minister, etc., but also the technocrats?
Okay, so first of all, from my recollection, you have very hardworking people at our hospitals, at our health centers, and at our Ministry of Health. Generally speaking, of course, you will find slackers everywhere. But generally speaking, you have people who are really committed and who want the right environment to give their best. Let's go back to the politicians, to the minister. It is the minister who appoints the board. So you need to be careful who you are appointing. You appoint the board. The board is responsible to you. The board is accountable to you. Why allow the system to break down
but the board
so drastically?
The board can only work with the resources that it is provided. So we're back to square one, the lack of financial resources.
Not necessarily, Timothy. You have to use the resources you're given to the best of your ability. We will never have enough money for health. I don't think there's any country that has enough money for health. I don't think so. But with whatever you're given, you've got to use it in a responsible way to provide the services that you are required to provide. So, was there a problem with the board? The minister needs to answer that. He appointed a board. Secondly, again, going back to the letter that the SLMD wrote, and do not forget, this letter had the blessing, or the letter was coming from the consultants at the hospital, the body of physicians and the consultants, the people who know best, the people who've seen us and who've worked through many challenges, the same people who gave up their time during COVID. These are the people who are saying it has never been so bad. It's untenable. We are prepared to sacrifice. We're prepared to work under tough conditions, but this is untenable. Lives are at risk. We just can't do it.
Don't you think the situation at the OKEU was inevitable? You're talking about the beleaguered state of the situation there. In terms of the transition from Victoria Hospital to the OKEU, the way it happened, almost in a haphazard manner, it was forced upon the previous administration because of the advent of COVID-19. Isn't that what is manifesting itself right now, the fallout out of this?
Not necessarily, Timothy, because COVID came, granted, we had to have the respiratory hospital, and we had to move. All of the resources of the government, or most of it then, were redirected to health. I mean, there were lots of things, for example, we wanted to do at the constituency level we couldn't do because everything was redirected to health. The important thing, too, is that this government has had 3-4 years. When you see a problem manifesting itself, you deal with it. You don't wait for it to manifest itself. Now, let us assume that OKEU was the problem, which it is not. You're talking about overcrowding there. You're talking about people spending days in a wheelchair just waiting for a bed. One of the reasons it's overcrowded is that your health centers have been closed and they're not working. So where do you expect the people to go? They have compounded the problem. They have compounded the problem. So they've sat there watching the system break down. I mean, I don't know whether the Minister of Health has weekly meetings with all of his heads of department. When I was minister, I had weekly policy meetings. So the head of VH would have to come down. The head of the nursing services would have to come down. The head of mental health, everybody, we'd have to sit around the table. And we clinically went through everything. What is happening at the hospital? What are the problems? How are we addressing it? And week upon week, they would have to come and see what we're doing. And I made my rounds as well. So you've got to be on top of things because healthcare is so important. I mean, if someone has a broken leg, it needs to be attended to. I mean, the pothole, you can wait for 2 to 3 days. If someone has a broken leg, it needs to be attended to. If someone has a burst appendix, it needs to be attended to. When a woman goes into labor, the unit at the hospital needs to be ready to receive her. And if she needs to have an emergency C-section, there needs to be an obstetrician to handle her with his or her team. You can't mess about with that. You've got to sit there as a hospital waiting and prepared for any accident that might come through the door. And don't forget, now we have an increase in violent crime, an increase in homicides, an increase in accidents. The government knows that. Now is not the time for the hospitals to be crashing down on us. This government has killed health in this country. That's it.
We're talking about the shortage of beds as well, and something has surfaced, and that is the U.S. Southern Command some 2 years ago presented a field hospital with 40 beds to the administration, it was new at the time. And my understanding is that it is through the efforts of the previous administration of Mr. Alan Chastanet that this donation was made. What we'll do right now is to play a clip of the health minister. He did a Facebook Live, and just before the presentation, basically touting the need for this 40-bed facility.
Hi there, St. Lucia. How are you today? I hope you are staying safe. Today, we are about to witness the handover of a 40-bed field hospital facility to the government and people of St. Lucia. This precious gift is being donated to us by the government and people of the United States of America. We thank the government and people of the United States of America for this gift. This gift will be used in the event of a disaster or in case of some emergency. We want to thank everyone who collaborated in this venture. Those who did the training, the Army Corps of Engineers from the United States, the NEMO and the Fire Service and the police, and so many agencies. I want to thank the officials of the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs and the Cabinet of Ministers. You will hear a lot more about this facility. We are about to start the ceremony, but I want to tell you this is a very important facility, and we look forward to taking care of it and to ensure that St. Lucians benefit from it. There are generators, it's fully equipped, and the medical staff is looking forward to using it if necessary. Have a great day. Continue to be safe. Continue to help your family and your neighbors to be safe. And let us stop this COVID-19 pandemic. We are now about to start our ceremony. Have a great day.
Speaking ahead of that presentation, some 2 years ago, Health Minister Mr. Moses Jean-Baptiste, do you think that by now this should have been utilized?
Yeah. Well, I was the Minister of External Affairs when we negotiated this, so I'm well aware of it. Now, normally a field hospital would be used...
But before I continue, what prompted the authorities then, including yourself and the Prime Minister, to request such a facility?
Well, we saw what happened with COVID, and I mean, we didn't know how the COVID would have ended, you know, in terms of whether or not we'd have, whether we'd have the space at VH to house everybody. We didn't know how it would have ended, you know. We were able to manage it well, and so the field hospital was never used. But the fact that we're even talking about using this now shows what a drastic situation we are in with health. You know, normally these facilities are used in a disaster, because, you know, you mount them up in a field. So you're talking about, we have a $200 million EC dollar loan that we've taken to deal with St. Jude. You're talking about a health and security levy. You're talking about, we have the Victoria Hospital, the OKEU. All of these are supposed to be providing a good quality health care. But yet still, we're in disaster mode. So much so that we have to be thinking. We have an avalanche of persons coming into OKEU because the health and wellness centers are being closed. Even if the government were to mount this field hospital, the fact that added the 40 beds wouldn't solve the problem. I'm not saying it should not add the beds. When you add the beds, you still need nurses and doctors and everything to staff it. You still need to have the supplies, the bandages that you don't have, the medications that you don't have. You still need to have additional personnel to staff these hospitals. But you know what? We're in a disaster, we're in an emergency, maybe they should think of doing it. We need the additional bed space, but we need more than that. We need the good management the doctors have left. So you're going to take the few doctors you have left to spread them over a wider perimeter, so to speak, if you add your 40 beds to, say, for example, an existing hospital, because it cannot stand in a field on its own.
Yeah.
It needs to be near a hospital. So this is the situation we are in. But guess what? This government cares about the optics, how they look. So they might think if they put it on, it will look like we're in a disaster. Well, guess what? Unless you diagnose a problem, unless you're honest with yourself and diagnose a problem, you will not fix it. And what they're doing is pretending that there is no problem. This is why the Prime Minister said, people have gone to greener pastures, it's normal. Refuses to diagnose the problem, doesn't care about the people who are dying, the people who cannot access health care. Look at that 6-year-old child, Julia, who was shot. Look at that. Look at how her mom had to be out there begging, you know? So he doesn't care about that. The Minister of Health doesn't care about that. They care about how they look. It's not about putting people first. It's about protecting the victory. So if that field hospital is put down, it will say to the world, and it will say to solutions, we do have a problem. We are in crisis. This is a disaster. We need to go into emergency mode, but they don't want that.
The fact that you are speaking on this as a politician, and the United Workers' Party has been also making an issue of the poor state of the nation's health sector, wouldn't it be a lot more effective if we had an active civil society making reference to that particular issue? Because this definitely is lacking.
Well, Timothy, you know, I'm just wondering, maybe our people are so scared of victimization, are so scared of the government that they don't want to come out. After we had the demonstration outside Parliament on Tuesday, when I got to my office the next day, there was someone waiting there for me. And what did she come to tell me? She came to encourage me. She said, Mrs. Beaubrand, I just came to thank you for demonstrating outside Parliament, but also I wanted to tell you to make sure when you speak, you reach out and you mention all of those people who would like to demonstrate, but they're afraid of doing it. She said, make sure that when you speak, you mention them and let them know that you are aware that they would like to demonstrate, but they're afraid to do it.
But we continue to hear operatives of the St. Lucia Labour Party, even government ministers, say that the people have a right to protest and nothing will be done to prevent them from doing so.
It's not about that, Timothy. It is about, this is a small society. We all know who you are. Sometimes, even by association, people assume you're one color when you're not even that way. And you know that affects everything. If you're a businessman, that affects whether you get any business from government. If you're a civil servant, that affects whether you get a promotion. If you're an ordinary person, it affects whether you get a step job to clean by the roadside. I mean, there are lots of people. Someone met me yesterday and said, you know, Sarah, ever since you left, I haven't been able to get one job to clean by the roadside because I associated with you. And I'm told I've got to take off my yellow t-shirt, take off my yellow band for me to get a job. This is what is going on, and we know it.
How can we change this? Because it appears that the victimization happens on both sides, whether it's the SLP or the UWP are doing it.
Well, I have to say, when I was a member of Parliament of Cashew Central, I never asked people where they voted. People came into our constituency office, they asked for employment, and we assisted them. And in fact, my staff and the people who work with me knew that if they ever did that, I would be dealing with it. So it happens on both sides, probably yes, but it does not happen in every case.
Back on the health sector, and in particular the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, Dr. Damian Greaves, you served with him in 2 SLP administrations between 1997 and 2005, thereabout. He is scheduled to become the CEO of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. What say you to this? Your reaction?
Well, Timothy, I really would wish Dr. Damian Graves very well. We need to have this matter resolved. We need to have OKEU functioning as a premier hospital. And all I would want to do is to wish him well, honestly, because this is not a petty political issue. I'm talking about the administration of health. We all need a good hospital. So I would wish Dr. Damian Graves all the best and hope that he can solve this matter, because guess what? We're all suffering and we need to have this rectified as soon as possible.
Let me turn my attention to another issue of concern to you, and you highlighted it earlier this week, and that is the Halls of Justice. The fact that it's being constructed very close to the Cathedral of the Minor Basilica. Why are you concerned about this?
Timothy, I'm really, really concerned about this. Number one, we don't know how this project, this massive project, this 5-story monstrosity, will affect the structural integrity of the Minor Basilica.
So therefore, shouldn't a study be conducted?
I'm wondering, I was about to say, has planning approval been given? The DCA, prior to giving approval, the DCA would want to satisfy itself of certain matters. So whether an environmental impact assessment has been done so that all of the social environmental issues can be addressed, relevant questions asked, and whether the DCA has done the usual checks that it does. Has it given planning approval? Do we know that there has been an EIA? Do we know that planning approval has been given? This should be public information. We shouldn't have to be begging for this. The Minor Basilica is a building of spiritual, historical, and cultural value to all of the people of St. Lucia. Now, why can't we be told that the DCA has given approval, everything's fine, if it is the case? Why can't we be told whether there is an EIA that has been done? Why can't we be privy to its contents? Timothy, I was told, and again, I'm subject to correction on this, that the drilling, the preparatory work that's being done now on this site is being done at night, because when it was happening during the day, there were people from the nearby buildings, businesses working, who had to be running out of the buildings because of how much shaking and how much the tremor was so strong they couldn't stay working during the day. And that is why all of this work is being done at night. This is a really, really urgent matter to be addressed, because guess what? Let us just say that the report didn't find anything wrong. We don't know. At this point, we're speculating because no one will tell us. The National Trust. The Prime Minister said that he got written permission from the National Trust to demolish the old courthouse and to demolish the old Ministry of Education building. He said nothing about what the National Trust might have said about the impact on the cathedral. He said nothing about that. He remained silent about that. So I want to ask myself, did the National Trust also write the Prime Minister and express concerns about the Minor Basilica and how it might be affected by this building from a structural point of view?
But how do you expect the National Trust to speak independently on that particular subject matter? When, for example, you just got the subvention reinstated, $700,000, and then the waiver. Do you think that it has basically lost its independence as a result, that maybe might be afraid to bite the hand that is feeding it?
I don't see why it should be afraid, because that $700,000 doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to the people of St. Lucia. The people of St. Lucia's money has provided the National Trust with a subvention. And the Act is very clear as to what its responsibilities are. The National Trust has spoken up before. The National Trust took the previous government to court. The National Trust has spoken before. So the two institutions that can most advocate on this matter are the National Trust and the Catholic Church. And both of these are quiet. We know they're engaging with the government, but we have no idea what the discussion is about. So isn't this our business? Timothy, you have a minor basilica. This is the largest cathedral in the whole of the Caribbean. I'm just thinking how many masses in its 127-year existence, how many masses, how many funerals, how many baptisms, how many weddings have been said there. This church has directly impacted every single St. Lucian. People are saying, I mean, you have a 5-story building, not a 3-story building. And the government is so deceptive, Timothy. If you went and had a look at the picture that's put up on the barricade, it shows a 3-story building. So that someone walking by would say, oh, it's a 3-story building. It's not. They show a 3-story building, but the plans are for a 5-story building. It will obliterate the cathedral completely because it will block the front of the cathedral facing north. It will block the front completely. This is the only view you have of the cathedral, of the front of the building. It will block it entirely. Now, so you mean to tell me this is the best place in St. Lucia to put the Halls of Justice? This is the only place to put it? The Prime Minister said we need the Halls of Justice in the city. This is the only place in the city you can put the Halls of Justice? So let us say, which I suspect is not the case, let's say that the report, the DCA did their assessment, the engineering and everything, evaluations. Let's say an EIA was done. I don't think the EIA could ever conclusively say that there will be no structural damage done. Because you know how these things work. It's when you start to work and you dig, you realize things are happening.
But shouldn't we leave that to the experts?
Can we take a chance?
Shouldn't we leave that to the experts?
No. I'm saying the experts can always say, based on this and that, I don't think. But guess what? They are in these matters, they are always unforeseen. Can we take a chance? That's what I'm saying. Even if the experts say A, B, C, and D, is it worth it taking a chance? So let's assume we go ahead, and God forbid, I'm praying it doesn't happen. And to me, all Catholics, all of St. Lucians really need to be praying about this. Let us say they go ahead and do what they're doing. And we find it now compromises the integrity of the cathedral. What do? You've got to stop it. So now you've destroyed the cathedral and you still can't do what you're doing. So you'll have a massive crater in the city, or you'll have a massive unfinished structure, and you've destroyed a 127-year-old minor basilica.
What if it
So we would have lost completely.
What if it doesn't happen?
What if it doesn't happen? So Timothy.
What if everything goes according to plan and the structural integrity of the church is not compromised?
Okay, so let us hope that it's not compromised, because none of us would want that. Now, you have this massive 5-story building there. Someone said on your program, I think, that the cathedral is so hot. And this is a minor point probably. The cathedral is so hot. Right now they'll be blocking all of the free flow of air coming in. So I think, can you imagine, with all of the courts, with the prisoner cells, with people coming in and out to hear their cases throughout the day, what that's going to cause? Why do you want this in the city? Why do you want it there? Do not forget, Timothy, the Minister for Creative Industries, Ernest Hilaire, came and said proudly that the government was going to build a monument. A monument as a tourist attraction to commemorate that awful, heinous attack. So you're going to build a monument. You're going to come to build a monument. He didn't say where he was going to build it, but I assume he was going to build it in the vicinity of the cathedral somewhere. So you're going to come and build a monument to attract visitors, and you have a 120-year-old historic building, right? in its own right of such spiritual significance and you blocking it, I would say to the minister, keep your monument and preserve our cathedral.
How do you expect the leadership of the church to deal with that?
Well, Timothy, I hope that they're dealing with it because, again, there was a press release that says that the church had written a quiet letter. I mean, I, as a parishioner and as a citizen, as a parishioner of the Minor Basilica, and as a citizen, would really want to know what's in the quiet letter because I want to be comforted that the church has raised all of these relevant issues, only some of which I've raised. So if the church would let us know what's in the quiet letter, we can pray about it because we bring everything to God, and especially on a matter of such spiritual significance for Catholics and for Christians, and a matter of national importance, of urgent national importance, we would want to pray about it so that the best decision is made, so that the government is mindful of whatever issues the church has raised, which we don't know. I noticed that in a recent press release, the Prime Minister said that they are listening, they're having consultations, they will be consulting with everyone, he said. So I am hopeful that the government will listen to the concerns that have been raised and will stop this project and take it somewhere else. Because to be honest with you, I don't see what compromise there can be. This is not the place for the building.
What we'll do right now is to put the telephone number, well, it's already there. The telephone number is on screen so that you can call with your questions and the comments for my guest, former Health Minister Sarah Flood-Bober. She is also the former MP for Castries Central. You have highlighted this particular issue involving the construction of the halls of justice and the church, but no one else. People are not speaking about it. It has not resonated with people.
Yes.
But we have a call. Good evening to you, Newsmaker Live. You're on the air.
Make a contribution, please.
Go ahead, please, caller. Caller, please go ahead with your contribution.
Sarah.
Yes. Good
Are you
evening,
an
caller.
engineer? Are you an engineer, Sarah?
I didn't hear the question.
Are you an engineer? He's asking.
Are you qualified?
Yeah, but caller, you know the answer to that question. So let's make your point,
Yeah,
please. You
Caller,
always every Wednesday you come with the same antagonistic attitude, caller. Just make your point. If you have a point to make, because you know Mrs. Flood-Bober is not an engineer.
So,
Why would you ask that?
right.
But
I am not an engineer, but I would like to know what the engineers think. And they're not telling us what they think. We're not hearing from the persons who are qualified to tell us, which is why we have to speculate.
we have a call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live. You're on the air.
Hi.
Good evening to you, caller.
I would like to pose, I see she spoke, Mr. Flood spoke about OKU a lot. Mrs. Ross, I am aware that it was the UWP government who stopped the fifth finger, the building of the fifth finger at the OKU hospital, where they could have had more beds, more space for patients. That's one. Two, you talk about, I expect what I heard you say about personnel resigning from OKU and blah, blah, blah. But are you aware?
Caller, not blah, blah, blah. People are resigning from the OKU, not blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Okay, so can you recall, it was the Alan Shaftesbury government who were having notice to resign just to go on contracts, and all of them migrated, they left because of that. 1 year contract, 2 year contracts. You can remember that, of course. A lot of nurses left in Russia because of that. Because you can't tell if you have been in public service for years. All of a sudden, because you have to go to work of OKEU, which was under the management of Cayman City, you had to resign your job to go on a 1 year contract, and that was unfair. And a lot of nurses and even doctors left St. Lucia, right? And then you have the situation where you have a government that had a transition team in place to pay $160,000. They'll fire them. They'll fire them and they'll put Cayman City there to do the transition from Victoria to OKU and pay them $25 million. You know what $25 million could do for OKU right now? That $25 million went overseas. That $25 million could do a lot for OKU in terms of medicine. Whatever it is that has to be bought for the hospital. Government would not have to put money in OKU right now had that money been there.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Okay, Timothy, I heard partially what the caller said. My mic is not working so well. But first of all, I would like to say Whatever we were doing was so much better because what the mess we have now, we never had it in our time. And mind you, we were dealing with COVID. We were managing COVID as well as the normal health situations and meeting the health needs of St. Lucians. So what we were doing was clearly working. The caller also said something about the additional unit was supposed to be built and we wouldn't have had a problem with beds. One of the main reasons we have the problem with the beds and the overcrowding is the condition and situation of our primary health care, which is our wellness centers. When we did the health sector reform, Timothy, the emphasis was on strengthening primary health care and building a smaller secondary hospital, which is why the bed capacity of the OKEU is what it is. Because we were supposed to continue investing in primary health care so that we prevented problems occurring. We dealt with them at a community level, so you did not have the overcrowding you have. Any properly run healthcare system places more of its emphasis on primary healthcare. So you keep people well. So you reduce the need for these interventions at the secondary healthcare. You mash up your primary healthcare, you will have overcrowding at OKEU, and do not blame anybody but the SLP.
We have a call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Good evening, sir.
Hello.
Caller, go ahead with your contribution, please.
Yeah, I want to ask the Sarah. He said that they want to offer every solution health security, health insurance, $75,000 health insurance. So when you all were in power, why you all wanted to privatize the hospital? If you all could afford for $75,000 for health insurance, why you all wanted to privatize the hospital when you all were in power?
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Okay. Timothy, I want to go back to when I first became Minister of Health, where we had the Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother running St. Jude and the Sisters of Mercy running St. Jude. People used to leave Castries to go down to St. Jude to have their surgeries done. People used to pay their bills at St. Jude with dasheen and plantain. And you had a fantastic hospital running. You had experts and clinicians coming from overseas and coming down. When we had to revamp our A&E, we got Howard Medical Center. We have always partnered with persons from outside who have the technical expertise and know-how to ensure we have proper systems and procedures and train St. Lucians alongside. This is not anything new. Right now, we have the Cubans assisting us. And if you go to Cuba, you will go to a park in Cuba and a nurse will turn up to take your pressure. This is the strength of their system, primary health care. So, St. Lucians, let us wake up. We have a mess. Do not wait for you to be a victim. Do not wait for your family member to be a victim before we acknowledge we have a serious problem. I am speaking here because I want healthcare to be better. I may have to go there. My family member may have to go. Now, what are we doing? We're putting a lot of pressure on Tapia Hospital. Because rather than maintain what they got, what they inherited, this administration, and improve it, they're breaking down everything. So now, when we get into office, we have to now go back to basics. And yes, you need the health insurance, because even while you build the infrastructure, people need to have access. Healthcare is costly and they need to be able to pay. So we were building the infrastructure even whilst we had COVID. Even whilst we had to manage a new hospital at VH for the COVID patients, we had to operationalize OKEU, we had to work on St. Jude's, keep the primary healthcare going. We were doing all of that. And still we were saying on top of that, if we got back in, whilst we keeping everything running and improving, we'd ensure people have access to healthcare.
We have a call. Good evening to you, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
This is the first time I'm calling your show.
Thanks
I'm not there to pass anything, but I'd like to ask the ex-Minister of Health, Mr. Sarah Clover, in her tenure, what is it that she did to actually alleviate all those problems that we're having now?
But she has addressed this, man. She addressed it at the commencement of the program. She spoke on it.
And if we are so passionate about the health of St. Lucian, why isn't both parties coming together to make it better for us, St. Lucian?
All right, thank you so much.
What was the last point she's about coming together?
Why the political parties are not coming together to make things better for St. Lucians?
Well, first of all, you elect a government to govern.
Yeah.
I mean, you elect a government to govern. We have a health and security tax imposed on us, a compounded tax that has increased inflation. Fuel prices are high.
You have a call? Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening to you.
I am just calling to make a contribution to your show.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I listened to Mrs. Ford discuss her ideas and a lot of the implementations that she has been shouting on your show tonight. And I recall these things happened when she was a member of the St. Lucia Labour Party, because that's the only time she served as Minister of Health. And so she needs to credit the Labour Party for all these ideas that she brought forward during her time as Minister of Health. Because when she served with Alan Chastney, she was Minister of Foreign Affairs. And so she was brilliant during that time. So that's one observation I made from her discussion. Another observation is that she continues to say that all the experts are leaving and they're resigning because the hospital is in a deplorable state. However, if the experts were such experts, why did the hospital end up being in a deplorable state while they were there serving? If they were so effective, the hospital would not have been, at that level. So who are we blaming? And another issue that I have with what's happening at OM King, with all the overflowing and with patients, that every Minister of Health has failed, is to get the wellness centers to function effectively. This is one of the biggest problems that OM King is suffering from. This is why they have to deal with the backlash of the deficiencies. And while she was Minister of Health, she did not fix that problem. And up to now, Minister Jean-Baptiste is not attempting to fix it. The doctors are supposed to be providing 8-to-4 service at the health centers, and that is not happening. And so the backflow of patients end up at OM King, causing all the disaster, lack of medication, all the resources are being utilized because the wellness centers are not functioning effectively, and nobody is attempting to address that problem. And this is the biggest problem that is causing a lot of what is happening, that the wellness centers are not functioning effectively, and nobody is holding the doctors accountable for not providing the service they're supposed to be providing, along with other healthcare providers at the wellness center. So these are my three concerns I have to add to the discussion tonight.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. That's all what she contributed was when she was underneath the SLP and not as a candidate.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I wish to thank the caller for a very valid comment. She speaks as though she does have some health background. First of all, she agrees with me that the problem is at the primary health care. During my tenure, I'm at 34 health centers. I think we increased it to 35. So we kept that solid. If we hadn't kept it solid, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did. So she agrees with me. There were 34, we increased it to 35, and we kept these open. The point she raised about me giving the reasons why the experts are leaving, I didn't give the reasons. The St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association letter gave the reasons. The St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association letter, which was informed by the physicians and the consultants, gave the reasons why the people are leaving, why the doctors are leaving. I didn't give them. I merely repeated what the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association said, and they would be the best to know. And the third point she made about all of what I did during health, I did during the reign of the SLP. Certainly. I mean, I was the Minister of Health under the SLP administration. And I spoke about the fact that we brought a team together. We thought about things clinically, and we did. And I have to give credit to Dr. Kenny Anthony, and I did so in a recent statement that I made. I have my problems with Dr. Anthony. We don't agree on our policies, but he was a leader. Philip JPI is not a leader. That's the problem. So I have no qualms about admitting that, yes, all of these things we did in health, we did under an SLP administration where we had a prime minister who understood what the issues were. He provided resources. We did not have all the resources we wanted. In fact, we never got our full request that we made in our budget. We always got less than we asked for. But we made do with what we had, right? We brought in the persons we thought needed to be brought in, a solid team of persons at the ministry, at the hospital. We were able to keep things going amid the challenges, so much so that we were able to focus on mental health. For the first time, we had such a heightened awareness of mental health. We made some fundamental changes at Golden Hope Hospital, and we commenced the construction of the the new wellness center, which is attached to Millennium Heights. What you have now is that Turning Point has closed. And you have the OKEU in a mess and St. Jude in a mess. We kept St. Jude going as a premier hospital in the South. So yes, we did, because we had a man who was a leader, albeit I didn't agree with all of his policies, but he understood the importance of health. This Prime Minister does not.
Good evening to you, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Hi, Tim, good night.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Good night, caller.
Good night, and good night to your guest.
Good night.
When I heard, when I saw you played that clip with Mr. Jabati, Minister of Health, on that field hospital, you know, I really felt sorry for the government, you know. Because I circulated that clip only yesterday, Tim. Persons forgot that totally, it seems. That field hospital was commissioned, or it was requested by the UWP, received almost during COVID, was still on. We immediately after, during COVID, received by the SLP. I wonder, Tim, if I ask you, where is that field hospital?
Well, you shouldn't be posing that question to me, sir. Pose that question to the health minister.
Well, he won't answer. But also, the issue on the church, the cathedral and the halls of justice. I wonder if Mr. Joachim Henry, because he's in charge of ecclesiastical affairs, I wonder if he wouldn't be a suitable candidate to answer our pertinent questions on the cathedral, you know.
That's a good point, caller.
And I'm not being comical when I say that. Mr. Joachim Henry is the minister in charge of the churches. If we have concerns about that halls of justice as parishioners, he is the best man to allay our fears, you know. I don't want to hold your line. I know other persons are calling, but I just wanted to make those 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling. We have another call in line already. Good evening to you, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, good evening, Tim. Good evening to your guest.
Good evening, caller.
I just wanted to highlight that I think Ms. Bobre served as a Home Affairs Minister, is it?
As well, yes.
2016, is it?
No.
And not directly as Health Minister in that tenure. I don't think, I'm not sure whether the Prime Minister had the confidence to give her that portfolio. So we need to be clear. We need to be clear on that.
No,
That
she
is the first matter.
she served as health minister, sir.
She did, but what I'm saying is that from 2016, the last government that she was involved in, she was not the health minister. I think it was Mary Isaac who was the health minister. So we need to clarify that. When she served as a health minister a long time ago. So anyway, that's just one thing that I wanted to highlight.
I just want to understand what's your point.
That is one thing that I wanted to highlight. The second point that I wanted to make was that when she spoke of the girl who got shot and she spoke of the situation that the mother had to go through, did the UWP or anybody decide to pitch in? I mean, since the government failed, did they take up the responsibility? Another thing, last thing before I go, a change in structure is important. I mean, things can't look the same all of the time. A change in structures, I mean, castries or whatever, it needs to change. Like I said, she served from a long time ago, so we need to embrace change. So just look at the bigger picture and understand where I'm coming from. Have a good night, Sarah. Have a good night, Tim.
Thank you so much for calling.
Timothy, I want to be kind to the caller, but let me just say, and I'm going to put it in the way we used to speak when we were children, this government is mashing up things. The caller says we need change. It's not change. We need destruction. Total destruction is what is happening. We need change, change for the better. And I am using this opportunity again to ask the DCA, to ask the National Trust, where are the reports? I'm not an engineer, so I need an engineer to tell me. Where are the reports? Where are the environmental studies? Where there are the structural and engineering studies that have been done to say that this construction there will not compromise a 127-year-old historic minor basilica. This would end all of this back and forth. Why are you hiding the reports? And caller, don't you want to be assured that the change that is happening is for the better? Where are the reports? St. Lucians should demand the report. I am thinking that any St. Lucian would have the locus standi to ask for an injunction right now to stop what's going on there and have the reports produced. We need to know what's happening. This is a travesty, Timothy. We need to know what's happening. We need the environmental impact assessment, and we need to know that the DCA has given planning. Otherwise, this construction should stop forthwith.
Good evening to you. Just make a live on the air.
Hello.
Good evening to you, caller.
Good evening. How are you, sir?
I'm okay, sir. Good evening to you.
Good.
Good evening, caller.
Hi, this is Alan Chastney. How are you?
Hi, good evening to you, Mr. Chastney.
Good evening, Pierre.
Good. I want to clarify a couple of things that some callers called in for. First of all, this story that the Labour Party is trying to purport that it was a United Workers' Party administration that caused the fifth finger not to be built. I remember when Sir John came into office in 2006, and the monies that were allocated for the OKEU hospital were about to be lost. And this is a project that started all the way back in the 90s when Lansiku was still in office. And because the project could not have gotten off the ground, Osbert Dovern, who was then the Minister of Economic Development, was the one that ended up negotiating with the EU that they could proceed with the project and save the monies. But costs had gone up significantly. And because of the time, they did not allow the government to change the design of the hospital. And as such, the fifth finger was eliminated in order to get the hospital off the ground. And so it was United Workers' Party that actually saved that project and took advantage of the grant funds that the EU put in place, because under the Labour Party, they had failed to actually be able to make that happen. And if you remember, the Labour Party in those days would be accused of having labour pains. The second thing that I want to say is that Sarah Flood was a very, very capable minister, and when we're in cabinet, her expertise in health, particularly what had happened with healthcare insurance, that she made significant contributions in that area. And in particular, because she was the representative of Castries Central, she was the one who was fighting the most to keep the Chaussee Healthcare Center open. And even when the decision was being made to use Victoria Hospital to help support the health needs in the Castries Basin, she was the one who said that that was not sufficient. And in fact, the security on the Chaussee was an issue. And if you remember, Sarah, we were talking about putting a police station right next to it to help bring the security to the people who are using that particular healthcare facility. I also want to publicly say thank you to Sarah, because when she was the Minister of Foreign Affairs and we were going through the problems with COVID, she was the one out there working the phone all the time to try to get more and more support. And it was her in particular that worked with the ambassador in the U.S. Ambassador Linda to help get that tent of the hospital to come to St. Lucia. And it was her hard work and foresight that made that happen. So Cabinet is a collective decision-making body, and her compassion, her empathy is what really helped us significantly in that. I also want to say to some of the callers that called up to challenge the government on what its policies were in terms of the Millennium Heights and making it a statutory body. I want to remind everybody that, again, it was the Labour Party that came to Parliament and actually passed the Millennium Heights Act to statutize the entity. But they're not the ones who had the courage to implement it. And the moment that people started realizing what was going on, there was a long negotiation where nurses were not forced to come to Millennium Heights, but were encouraged to come there, and we had to work out a compensation package to them and a pension package to them, and that if in fact that they were let go at Millennium Heights, that they could get their job back in the civil service. So I want to say that it's United Workers' Party that made that happen at OKEU, allowed us to open it. We're not the ones who did the naming ceremony, and we did it under the most difficult circumstances. I do not want to overemphasize the importance of healthcare insurance in funding the hospital. And it's because of the lack of the healthcare insurance and not making more money available that we have found ourselves in the position that we're in today. So again, I thank you very much. And again, I wanted to say this to Sarah publicly again. Thank you for what you have done. And I know that you're not a person to go out and tout your own achievements, but I want to put it on record that she was the one that helped negotiate that with the U.S. government. So again, thank you.
Thanks so much. You just heard there from the Leader of the Opposition and Political Leader of the UDP, Mr. Alan Chastanet. Final comments from you.
Yes.
You wanted to react, and then your final
just
comments.
very quickly. I want to thank the political leader for calling to provide such important information. That's what information does. It tells people, it presents the facts so people can make their own decisions. So I want to thank you for that. This is what this government is not doing, which is why we're in the situation we are in. The information we need on these halls of justice is being denied us. And the point I wanted to make again with the caller, the fact is about the young girl Julia, the child, the 6-year-old child, the fact is, if we had the health insurance, the next day the mother would have been able to get the surgery, if not the very day, as soon as it was required. That's the point I wish to make. So, Timothy, my final comments. We really are in a sad situation in St. Lucia, really. I mean, no one can deny that our health system has broken down. We do not have functioning hospitals in St. Lucia at the moment. Our wellness centers are breaking down. If we do not do something urgently, it is only a matter of time. And St. Lucians, we cannot afford. We cannot afford to see our loved ones dying before our very eyes before we do something about this. So, if we leave this government in office, we will not just have the situation of homicides where people are killed on the streets, we'll have homicide by negligence, which is what is happening now. A government that is allowing our health system and our health centers and hospitals to deteriorate like that, and our nurses and doctors are leaving. A government that is selling our patrimony, selling our culture, selling our heritage, selling our citizenship, selling our lands. It's really time to do something. And I'm saying that a general election needs to be called, and we need to rescue St. Lucia.
Thank you so much for being my guest, former Health Minister, Mrs. Sarah Flood-Bobra, who is also the former MP for Cassia Central. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to you, thank you so much for watching and listening to the broadcast and contributing via your calls. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked.
God have mercy upon us.
Once again, good night and here's to a very good evening. My name is Timothy Polion. See you next time.
Hi, Philip Joseph here.
I would like to be judged as being the Prime Minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
Came into government that we had a manifesto and a vision and mission that had been approved by my party, by the highest body.
Basel 11 has not been in existence. 50 was...
Giant getting bazooka. You spraying big on to knock out mosquitoes.
I have never had a joint account with anybody in my life. Not my ex-wife, not my children, nobody. And I will refer that to the Privileges Committee.
What about the culture of people getting into office and not being effective in taking
What people become Prime Minister of St. Lucia have been the most ready.
Let's do it this Wednesday, because if it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live.